I'm Christine Borland, and I'm working on this project called Projection Cloth for the BTB 23. The piece builds on work that I've been doing mostly with Flax, but considering the very specific history of this area, I'm looking at plant textiles of both flax and cotton as they come together in a cloth. So as I started to develop the idea, it seemed really important that the cloth would be made in situ in this incredible Crook barn at Pendle Heritage Centre. The reality is the percentage of authentic barn is really quite small, but we still feel the stories and the resonance of the history in the space itself, and the whole piece hopefully will echo that. When I made the decision that cotton had to, of course, be a big part of my installation, I started to think carefully about sourcing cotton. Rather than go to America, I had already done some work on cotton in connection to a project that was based in the north of Scotland in collaboration with the Department of Museum and Monuments in Malawi. So as part of that, I also had a bale of cotton imported back to Britain. At Helmshaw Mill, took delivery of the cotton. I brought it from Scotland, and we went through all the processing. Of course, then we're stepping into the story as it would have been in the Industrial Revolution. So it arrived and went into the Devil Hole, which is the first space where all these incredibly noisy machines were. So they're there to aerate the cotton, disentangle it, scotch it, break it up. We saw it going through all these processes. We ended up with these rolls that they call laps of almost felted looking cotton, and then that went upstairs to carding machines. It was brushed and combed again. All of these are to make it fluffy and to remove impurities. And so what I ended up with were rows and rows of, I love the name of it, it's called cotton sliver, these coils of cotton. My volume of cotton, although it filled 50 bin bags and seemed to me like an enormous volume, actually it was a tiny volume compared to the industrialised setup of the machinery there. So they could actually only take it through the initial processes. I took as much as I could get in my car back home and began to spin myself. The kind of easiest hands-on way for me to do it was to use a machine called a charka. It's an incredible piece of hand equipment. The machine I was using was actually invented by Gandhi as a result of a call out, a competition to design something that could spin Indian cotton to basically bring that industry back into the hands of the people. The flax that's been used for this project was actually grown in lockdown by participants all over the country, and then I've processed it, and then it was given to the Forest of Borland Guild of Spinners.
I hadn't spun flax before I'd started with this project, so it's a new set of skills for me, and it's then taking those skills and sharing them with other people. So today we're spinning the flax as part of the Festival of Making to show people the process of once the flax has been grown and cut, scutched and hackled, we're now spinning the raw flax into thread, and then that's going to be taken away. It's going to be sized, it's going to be boiled, and then it's going to be used to dress the loom with to weave onto. It feels fantastic. It's so nice to be involved in something local in the community.
Like every single part of this process, it has been the work and the heart and the minds of many different people who've participated in different ways, people and institutions. At this stage now, you see me working with Lynn Hawking. She is my master weaver, go-to goddess of threads and fibres. The scale of the weaving means that I can't physically handle it myself, nor would I have the knowledge to do that. But we're doing everything together. We pass our threads through, they meet in the middle, they cross, we pass them back, then we change the shed to bring the threads forward. So there's a beautiful choreography in this final part of the process. The loom has been built using wood sourced from the local area. You'll see a series of weights at the bottom of the loom, and they're made of clay that's been dug up, natural wild clay. These have all been kind of hand processed and made into the weights. They're unfired at the moment, but at the very end of the exhibition the trees can return back to the woods. I'll keep the cloth as my kind of artwork, and maybe I'll fire the clay weights. Very much, at the heart of the piece is that, mixing of materials, bringing together, looking at transition points, the way things were, the way things could have been, the way that we might imagine them developing into the future. Ultimately, it will be a series of projections accompanied by a soundtrack. So the soundtrack is a conversation between two voices.
The mahjong flowers form neat rows of carved stems, pounded into an infinite abyss by a porcelain hammer. Glimpses of pearl.
Organising the combed fibres to dress the distaff for spinning is intense and makes me hold my breath in concentration. I start by tying a tail of flax around my waist. There's 4 different films, one based on cotton growing, one based on cotton spinning, one based on flax growing, one based on flax spinning. So I describe my usually first-hand experiences of all the processes involved with the cloth. Sometimes I'm talking about my observations, for example, in Malawi, but in each time I speak, my daughter responds. Her texts, they're almost as if they're based in a far future, and she's trying to respond to what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying. The films themselves are made from motion captures of me acting out all of the actions associated with all of the processes that went into these cloths. I've worked with someone to make CGI effects on the figure to turn her into an avatar so that she's very, very abstracted. She'll be centred on the screen, but she'll spill over. What you'll see is a figure that hopefully occupies the whole of the barn. The stories that I've experienced sort of firsthand as part of making this piece, I've tried to sort of build into the piece itself. So we have ideas that are threaded through our history and mythology about women as spinners and weavers. And when the witch trials were happening, that was a moment where that was backfiring, and that was very much caught up in the changing perception of women no longer being healers, no longer having knowledge in relation to medicine. That knowledge was shifting into the institution of medicine and, of course, into the industrialisation of weaving, spinning, all of these hand processes. So it's been really important to me that that has been part of my thinking as I've been going along making this work. And although it's not screaming out that history, for me, and maybe especially redolent in the texts, that really is something that I hope to honour, that actually these processes and practices that now are associated with this icon of the witch are actually something that is, such an integral, embodied part of kind of communities of female friendship, collaboration, and hopefully is reflected in the work. The idea of projection cloth, it is a title that is very literal, but also I've been projecting, and hopefully visitors will project, a lot of stories and meanings and construct their own stories and meanings from access to these materials that I'm giving them. So it's both a kind of literal and metaphorical sort of title.